Good morning, everybody. How's it going? This is Michael here with David Olson.
Yes, sir.
And this is Carolina Off Grid, where we're talking about everything solar, battery backup, energy efficiency, renewable energy. And in fact, one of my first memories in school, I was like 12 or 13 years old in the 7th grade. I'm in a math class, and they told us we had to go out on our list of supplies and buy a TI-28 Texas Instruments calculator. When I got this calculator, it was so cool and amazing, had all these buttons and signs on it that I didn't understand. I raised my hand and asked the teacher, I said, "Hey, what is this?" And the teacher said, "That's a solar panel." I said, "What's a solar panel?" And he goes, "Well, that's what powers your calculator." I said, "Really? Wow, how's that?" He said, "Well, yeah, it takes the sunlight, and that sunlight becomes electricity, and that's what gives your little computer the power it needs to function." I'm like, wow, this is a little computer, and those little tiny cells at the top are all it takes to operate this. And he said, "Yeah, put your hand over it, cover it to see." And sure enough, it went off when I put my hand over it, and then it went back on. And I said, "But this isn't even the sunlight. These are crappy little fluorescent shop lights." He said, "Yeah, but that's enough light." So my mind was blown that not only could these operate on the sun, but also on very low-powered light bulbs. A computer could be powered with a little tiny solar cell that took up almost no real estate on that calculator. But most people don't realize the solar industry was advanced largely by techie guys, nerds, IT professionals. It was just like personal computers. Hobbyists, enthusiasts, clubs, people who realized I can use a screwdriver and build a computer and make it different than the next guy's computer, and mine's better. If you ever watch that movie about Steve Jobs or any of these old movies about the 1980s, that was a big part of the subculture. Solar is the same thing. The first people who used solar, yes, it was used by the Navy, yes, it was used in the military. It had high-level functions on NASA satellites. We talked about that before in previous episodes, how there are satellites in space that are 60 years old that still have fully functional solar panels. That brings us to today's news story, and we talked about this in the past, but did you know that there's an 11 megawatt hour, that's a huge, huge battery system at Camp Lajune, and they are pairing that with a 13 megawatt solar plant. Also huge. Now most houses that we go to, they're going to get 8, 9, 10, maybe a 13 kilowatt solar system with maybe a 10 kilowatt battery or a 20 kilowatt battery. This is 11 megawatts on a 13 megawatt system. It's huge.
Generous.
And it's Camp Lajune. So once again, the military leading the way. So on a personal level, your house, my house, the hobbyists led that charge. They are the ones that popularized solar panels. In fact, what you see on YouTube right now, a lot of hobbyists doing portable solar panels with portable batteries. Well, battery backup was once so expensive that only the largest groups like military, defense budget, they could justify battery backup. Now, and really wealthy homeowners. Now you're seeing any old YouTuber is going to get some sort of battery backup and some sort of solar panel and take it camping or put it on their off-grid cabin. And that system might cost $500 or $1,000 or $2 for a really premium one. Yeah. Today's question is two parts. Why would Camp Lajune spend so much money on a huge, this is 55,000 solar modules. That was done back in 2015. And an 11 megawatt hour lithium iron phosphate battery backup. I'm telling you guys, it was not a political decision.
Gee, was it about saving money, perhaps?
We obviously know Camp Lajune probably had generators, just like most hospitals have a big Kohler generator that runs on diesel or natural gas, but those are messy, noisy, they need a lot of maintenance because they have a lot of moving parts, and moving parts break. Now, this system doesn't have moving parts. They have almost an unlimited budget for the defense. They did this, actually they got a grant as part of this project, so that's really cool.
Interesting.
But solar is not a political decision, it's about saving money, it's about the best technology. And I love cars. I went and saw NASCAR not long ago, and it was really fun. Those big V8 engines, nothing sounds quite like it. It was, I imagine what an old Roman chariot race would be like, you know, in the Roman days. But there's nothing like a V8 engine, but however, my next vehicle is probably going to be an EV. Not because of a political reason, not because I'm a hippie or a green freak. It's because EV cars are better in every possible way, except for one, they don't do very long distance driving or with a heavy haul. They cannot There's trucks out there that can tow a heavy load, thousands and thousands of miles, and they'll just stop for 5 minutes and get gas.
Yeah.
An EV doesn't do that. Everything else it does better than a regular petroleum car. And for the people who say, that's not true, I've read a bunch of bad things about EVs. Well, the issue is not that the EV was bad. The issue is that Detroit kind of runs the show with automotive still. So you don't see a lot of stripped down basic cars. What most people want is, we've talked about this before, more similar to like an old Toyota Corolla or an old Honda Accord.
No such thing as a farm truck anymore.
A farm truck.
Yeah,
That's a great point.
bones.
Yeah, just simple. I want an air conditioner, a heater, and a radio. I don't need a whole lot else. But what do we see? You see you can't hardly get a truck for $50,000 or $60,000. It's got all these crazy features that you don't want or need. When they break, it's $1,000 to fix any one of them. That was a very intentional move. It's a profit motivation. Detroit's not trying to give you what you want, just like the government, your politicians are not, they don't care about what you want. They're doing what they're going to do based on their constituents, based on who lobbies them. Where we would want, you and I, the normal person watching, you want a normal farm truck. You want a simple, affordable car. A grocery go-getter, you want to go to and from work. Most people don't drive more than 20 or 30 miles a day. Even smaller groups of people drive 40 to 50 miles a day, and a very tiny fraction of people drive a lot more than that. But those are your professional drivers, your taxi drivers, your truckers. EV cars right now are more than good enough for 80 to 90% of what people need. That's good enough, that's great. What you're going to see in the future is just like other technology gets slowly better over time, EVs get better over time. There's going to be someone to come in eventually and say, here's a budget offering. And it's going to be a wild runaway hit. It's going to be a bestseller. But until that day, you just got to take the little gains. Part of why Tesla did what they did was coming into the market with a Tesla Roadster, a very expensive, fancy sports car. Because for him, it was an easier sale to come in with a really hot car. And he knew that was a good way to enter the market. A premium offering and then slowly start to offer more affordable market. If he had come right in with like a Ford Model T, a very cheap budget car, he could have been stigmatized and forever known as the budget brand. But he didn't do that. He took an opposite approach. So, all of these things mean what? Solar is the future. People still think it's a political move. It's not. There are definitely people who love it on both sides. Most of our early adopters had no political motivation whatsoever. I know that because I spent hours with them before, during, and after their install. Never once did politics come up. We just didn't think of that. We were too excited about the possibility of getting rid of their utility bill for a fixed fee. And I talked to a lot of customers. They still seem to think they have a choice. I was talking to someone today, and he said, well, you know, I don't know if this is such a good investment. You know, interest rates have gone up a lot lately. He didn't have cash. It's obviously always a better deal for cash. But he said, hey, what are the finance payments? We found him a payment plan. It was a little bit more than what he was spending on his utilities. And he said, well, this is not a good deal. I'm spending more money. I don't want to spend more to go solar. And I thought about it for a second. I'm like, hold on a second. That pool of money that you're paying your bills with every month, what else are you going to do with it? You have to pay your bills. You're still talking about this like you have a choice. Yeah. Could you just not pay your utility bill? Well, no, of course not. So whether it was $150 a month or $350 a month or whatever, that money's gone. It's accounted for. For the rest of your life, that utility bill is just going to keep going up, up and up and up. You can never stop the utility company from doing that. They're a monopoly. They're going to do whatever they want, and that's continually they will continue to raise their rates.
I will say, even what I'm doing is I'm seeing that some people know that these things are going to happen, but they're like, you know, maybe these politicians aren't that bad, and they're gonna, you know, they're gonna watch out for me. So be careful. Yeah, the politicians always have your best interest in mind. They care about you more than they even care about getting reelected. Now, I think it's funny. I read an article that said most Americans believe that politicians are corrupt, except for their politicians. Right. It was just, the gaslighting was so intense that, like, all those other guys are bad, but my guy, he's pretty good. I met him at a town hall, and he's the best person I've ever met. Oh yeah, because they're people. They're so good at making friends. They smile. Yeah. You have this kind of celebrity shock where you're just standing in front of this person that you see on TV, and they shake your hand. How's the kids doing? Hey, how are you doing? You know, you've been working out, and you're like, I'm meeting a famous politician, wow, and I'm kind of nervous, I'm sweating, I don't know what to say, and I was going to ask him a smart question, now I'm like,
Okay, cool, see ya. There's 10 people in line behind me wanting to shake his hand.
Yeah.
I envisioned it going very differently. But no, they're just people like you and me.
Yep.
And I think if anything we've learned over the past 3 years, since 2020, is that politicians can be bought and paid for, scientists can be bought and paid for, any expert in any field can be emotionally manipulated. They can be pushed, coerced. They are not these stoics of virtue just because they hold a position of authority. And in fact, they're the biggest target for manipulation, for bribes, whatever you want to call it. I think we talked about normalcy bias a lot. I think the problem is with a lot of people is, I believe like you would never do that. I think if you were elected governor or something, I don't think you would take a bribe. I think because you're a normal person. But I think, hopefully, what are you doing?
Well, it's crazy to see some of these guys. Maybe you did grow up with them and you knew them as a kid, but they've changed because they're in the political world. Because, as you said, they do get generous handouts under the table.
But it's a lifestyle. It's like, for one, it's not an ordinary person because they're pursuing it. Like, I think, like, we love the movie Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, where it's like this really guy who wants nothing to do with politics, he gets dragged into it. He's like, okay, I'm going to do the right thing and go to Washington, and I'm going to reform that place. Where a lot of people, some of these people are look at Paul Ryan, a career bureaucrat. He spent his entire career aggressively pursuing power. You can say whatever you want, love him, hate him, but the public record is clear. A guy like that, and you can say that on both sides of the aisle. You know, the Pelosi's, the Gavin Newsoms of the world, they have absolutely devoted all of their time, energy, and other people's money to getting powerful, just consolidating power. And I think that does attract a certain personality type, and that's no stretch of the imagination.
Sure.
So, back to the normalcy bias, the average dude that you would meet on the street, I meet customers all the time, they're like, gee, I don't know. It's like, no, you would never do that. The utility rates keep getting higher, that's what we're talking about. Inflation keeps getting worse and worse, that's directly manipulation of the Fed and the Federal Reserve. They're abusing their authority and power. And you think, I don't know if that's what they're going to continue to do. Look at how many people are struggling to afford to pay their bills right now. Guys, this is what's coming down the pipeline. This is what's happening. It's not just going to go away. It's not just going to change because you want it to. Your whole life, you've been able to afford to pay your bills. Your parents' normal was a single family home, one job, the wife stayed at home, you had a nice brand new car, and you could live on a single income, and quite comfortably. The middle class is rapidly eroding. The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. Solar is your chance to mellow that out a little bit. I can't solve all your problems. We can't, I don't really believe that you shouldn't think too highly of yourself, right? We're doing what little we can.
Yeah.
But right now what you can do is you can put, hopefully, because not every home qualifies. That's the thing. People think that anybody can get it, but if your home's not qualified, if your roof's not qualified, if you're not personally qualified, we just weeded out so many people where the house isn't right, they don't have a good credit score, or they don't have money in the bank, they can't borrow money. That really limits it. So to the people out there who have a good roof, tons of sunshine, not a lot of tree shade, you got a good credit score.
Or a good backyard as well.
You got a good backyard for a ground mount. Yeah, but most people don't have a big yard. Most people have a small yard. You consider yourself lucky, very fortunate, very blessed. This is your chance. Credit is crunching. It's harder to get a loan. It's harder to get a favorable loan. It's harder to get a low interest rate. It's going to continue along that path. Banks are closing like crazy. Hundreds of banks have closed in America. Major banks have closed recently, and it's not getting much news in the headlines. They'll spend more time talking about a submarine in the Titanic, and they don't talk at all about what's really happening in the news.
Chinese weather balloons.
Chinese weather balloons, yeah. That's what the news is talking about.
Terrible.
But in reality, inflation's out of control. It's just getting worse. The CPI, the Consumer Price Index, is a bold-faced lie. It is not in any way representative of real inflation. They're dumbing down those numbers. The government just redefined recession. We entered a recession.
Multiple times.
They changed the definition of recession. Well, we're not really entering into a recession because we just changed the definition of the word. Don't be fooled. You've heard the phrase, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Right now, you've got to say, what can I do for myself? What can I do? What do I have control over? What can I do to make this world a better place? I love the serenity prayer. God, grant me the strength to change the things that I can change and and acknowledge the things that I can't change, and know that I'm totally butchering that. But the whole point of the Serenity Prayer is some things you can change, some things you can't. God, give me the wisdom to know the difference. Sorry, someone's going to just be... I know.
How dare you?
So I got very annoyed by that. I almost want to look it up. But you get the point. The point is, solar is something a lot of you can do. Put the panels on your roof, get rid of your utility bill, most of it, for the rest of your life. Get a fixed low payment, pay that thing off, and get free electricity for the rest of your natural life. That is a good deal. You can afford it. If you can afford to pay your utility bills every month, you can afford this. This is great for people with a young family who are growing. This is great for people who are thinking about retirement soon, because that 30% federal tax credit, it's going to be harder to get when you're retired and you're trying to live on Social Security. So do it now before you retire. This is really good for people who want to lock in a payment. Imagine if you could have bought your gasoline at $1 a gallon and locked in that price for the next 20, 30, 40 years.
I'd love that.
I don't know anybody who wouldn't do that. Do you know, talk about normalcy bias. Once upon a time, when I was a kid growing up, gas stations didn't even have a third digit. You'd look on the sign up, what was the price? 97 cents, 98 cents. And some of them would have a third digit, like a little 1, that could light up or not light up. But that just shows, for the longest time, gas stations only had 2 digits on their outside sign. They never fathomed it getting over $1. Newer gas stations would have a 1, never fathoming that $2 a gallon could be possible. Now, we see 3 digits where it could be digital, like dollars, but not a 4th digit. I'm telling you, gas is going to $10 a gallon or better. You are insane or willfully deceived if you don't believe gas is going to get to $10 a gallon or higher. That's why things like electric cars are going to continue to be more popular as the technology gets better. Who is surprised that technology gets better? I keep having these discussions with people like, oh, I don't think it's there yet, solar's not there yet, battery backup is not there yet, EV cars, it's not there yet. EV cars are amazing. They might be priced higher than you want, but did you know there's a lot of brands coming out of India, China, Brazil, other places? America is so shisty with their laws, thank you, Congress, that we can't even import these cars. There's a lot of really cool, affordable EVs that you cannot mass import into America. We've got all this cheap junk we're importing from Walmart. I mean, Walmart's almost entirely full of cheap junk from China, but yet it's almost impossible for me to import an EV car that's affordable. So no, the whole argument about EV cars are unaffordable, you're missing the point. That's not the true argument. EV cars are amazing. They're just getting better. If you don't want one, I'm not going to force you to get one. I think that was the real reason people got upset, is we keep giving a mouthpiece to these crazy people who are like, ban all petroleum vehicles. I don't think that's how it's going to play out.
No.
I don't think that the way it's going to play out is one technology keeps getting better, one fails to keep up, and the other one just wins. Like solar. Solar keeps getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper every year, making our job easier and easier every year. Yeah. And that's why the adoption happens. It's not because I'm some amazing skilled person, it's because it's good and getting better all the time. So get it now, don't wait till next year, because while it is getting better all the time, we are making small gains. We're not going to go from a 400 watt panel to a 500 watt panel next year. They'll be 405, 415, 425. They'll get a little better over time. And yes, there are bigger panels out there, but my point is the average person right now is typically installing a 400 watt panel on their home. Bigger ones are used for commercial applications or industrial scale applications. But if you wait a year or two to get solar, the only thing you're going to lose is that $2,000 or $3,000 a year you're giving to the utility company. And no, you will not make that up in what you save by solar being a little bit better next year or a little bit cheaper. Do it now, you're bleeding money, you're hemorrhaging money. You're just giving it away to the monopoly. The utility company thinks you're stupid, they don't respect you. All they do is keep the lights on, and they keep raising the rates even when it's unjustified. Our local utility made billions of dollars in profit last year. Now they're raising our rates by deep double digits. There's no other explanation for that. So, any other cool news articles you want to share before we wrap up?
No. I was going to let you talk.
So, normalcy bias, that's our phrase for today.
Yeah.
A normalcy bias is a cognitive bias which leads people to disbelieve or minimize threats, warnings. Consequently, individuals underestimate the likelihood of a disaster when it might affect them, and its potential adverse effects. People want to believe that everything's fine and everything's going to be fine. The TV tells you that all the time. It's not true. You have the ability now. Take matters into your own hands. Be your own safety net. I'm not saying you can't depend on God. I'm not saying you can't depend on your community. I'm not saying anyone's ever 100% self-sufficient, but there's a happy medium that you can strike where you're doing as much as you can on your own and having faith as much as you can in what's unseen and what's beyond your control. That's all I have for you today. Thanks so much, David, for joining me. Thanks, everybody. If you want to get solar on your home or get an estimate, we are nationwide. Just reach out, and we'd be happy to start that discussion. All right, thanks.
Take care.